Hey everybody, Griffinlobster. Yeah, so 2011, pretty good year on a couple of fronts actually. It was a good year for school for me, pretty good year for school, pretty good year for work, pretty good year for life. I managed to do a video every day of 2011. If you're interested in seeing that, if you haven't, I'll put a link in the doobly-doo down there. Uh, which is indicative of the fact that my life is fancy-free enough where I can do that sort of thing. But above all, 2011 was a great year to be a gamer. Matter of fact, I think it was the best, in my humble opinion, the best year for gaming since 2007. And now, does it beat 2007? Probably not. 2007 saw the beginning, the fledgling life of the Wii and the PS3, and also some games came out in 2007 that you just cannot argue with, like Bioshock and Portal. So, not as good as 2007, but a really, really darn good year. So good, in fact, that this top 10 list was harder to make than any list so far. And so let's get right into it, I guess. We're going to do things a little bit differently this time, but we will start with the little rules I like to say at the beginning. First and foremost, I did not play every game of 2011. I just did not have the time or the money to do so. So chances are, if a game you really liked is not on this list, it's just because I didn't play it. However, also take into account that I am pretty well in tune with my tastes. So if I didn't play the game, then chances are that I didn't play it because I didn't feel like playing it, or I knew it wouldn't appeal to me, or I wouldn't like it very much. And I'm going through some trends right now. I'm not really into mainstream first-person shooters. Sort of fell out of whatever with that. I didn't play Call of Duty or Battlefield 3. But those games existed, and I realized that some people think they're great. I just didn't play them. That's the first little thing I want to say. Second thing, I'm going to go ahead and say my list, my rules again. So no DLC, no downloadable games at all, really. I just want to do retail games. I don't know why. Just still a thing. Also, no HD or 3D remakes. That seems to be an especial problem this year because there seem to be a lot of them. Technically, I guess, Ocarina of Time 3D and Resident Evil 4 HD would be my favorite games of 2011 then. But obviously that's not fair. I gotta pick just games that came out in 2011 originally. So, yeah. And third, I feel like this needs to be said, this is just my opinion. It's not necessarily more important than yours. Just so happens that I am particularly fond of my opinion, and as such, choose to subject you to it. Whether you choose to agree with me or not, that's up to you. I don't care either way. I'm just telling you what I like. So yeah, let's get started here. That pretty much covers it. We'll start with some honorable mentions, something I haven't done so far in the past. But I feel like there were so many good games this year that I need to talk about more than just 10. And I didn't want to make like a top 15 because then that's not exclusive enough. So we'll talk about some honorable mentions here. First honorable mention is Dead Island. This game, when it comes to zombie games, it's really hard to make a name for yourself. I mean, it's basically just a sea of unoriginality. All the games are essentially the same. And I think what this game managed to do with zombies that I haven't seen in a long time is that it actually made zombies scary again. I mean, admit it, in all recent zombie games, zombies are nothing more than lumbering shotgun fodder. I mean, they are unthreatening in every definition of the word. It's amazing that so many people are infected by zombies when you think about it, when they're so easy to kill. But this is not the case in this game. You get up close and personal with the zombies. It's visceral and messy. You have basically it's a first-person game, and it's based centrally around melee combat and upgrading melee weapons to attack enemies with. And it's definitely an interesting type of game that takes a little bit of getting used to. But I mean, the first time you encounter zombies, your first real combat encounter with zombies, you basically have a boat oar that's going to break after a couple swings, and you have to go out and kill some zombies with this boat oar. And it only escalates from there. The zombies get scarier and in greater numbers and tougher, and it's just a pretty unique zombie experience in like I said, a sea of unoriginality. Unfortunately, it is plagued with a few bugs, some glitches, and I think it overstays its welcome. It's way too long. I stopped after a little bit of the way through Act 3, a little bit while after I unlocked the achievement that for finishing 75 quests cumulatively is too long. It didn't hold my attention that long, and that's a shame because they admitted they rushed it out because they didn't want to have to compete with games like Call of Duty and Skyrim. And I think it could have benefited from just a little bit more polishing, maybe a month more of polishing. But nonetheless, great game. Zombie fans, you got to check it out. And I think it's definitely worth your time, especially if you like Borderlands. It's really similar to Borderlands. So, Dead Island. I have no place to put these games. Put them over there. Alright, next up, another game with Dead in it, another honorable mention, Dead Space 2. If you've played the first game, chances are you've played this one. But when I played the first game, Dead Space, back in 2008, I think, I really thought this was the new age of survival horror games. You know, it managed to create tension without detracting from gameplay. I mean, it's still a shooter, and you can make the case that it's not really a survival horror game if you have enough ammo, and you never really run out of ammo too much in this game. But you know, I thought it was managed to be scary with a combination of the atmosphere and the really grotesque enemies and the unique way you had to dispatch them, and you know that your inventory screen wouldn't pause the game. It was fun for all those reasons and scary for all those reasons without being cheaply scary. Like, you know, with Resident Evil 4, you have to stop to shoot, which, you know, it was forgivable back then. You know, that's one of my favorite games ever, so obviously that's fine with me. But when they did in Resident Evil 5, I thought it felt a little tired. And this game and its predecessor managed to be scary without making you have to stop to shoot. And you know, it's basically just more of the same. The storyline is complete nonsense. I don't care what you say, but you know, don't play it for that. Play it for the set piece moments and for fighting grotesque enemies and feeling like a badass. This game is maybe, I heard it was difficult. People said it was surprisingly difficult. I didn't think it was that hard. But the last boss gave me a run for my money, and it does use a couple of the tricks that its predecessor does. Like near the end, there's evil unkillable enemy man, like there was in the first game, and you know, it's just it felt a little bit like a rehash, but it was still a great experience. And I think if you love the first one, you're gonna love this one too. I certainly did. Next honorable mention, I'm going through these a little fast, but that's because they're honorable mentions. Next honorable mention is Rage, the newest game from id Software, the geniuses behind Doom and Quake, you know, and so this is their latest in their one-word title games that just inspire epicness. They're also the makers of a bunch of other games that aren't as good that came since Doom and Quake. But this was their recent effort, their new IP, if you will, and so I wanted to give it a look-see, and I wasn't disappointed. I kind of put my stock in this game, trying it out, and I wasn't disappointed. The story's crap. I'm just going to throw it out there. Story doesn't matter because it's crap. But it really hits it home in two very important aspects, and it's a very fun shooter. I think, and like it's really smooth, and the guns are really unique and fun, and there's like multiple different ammos for each gun, so you can approach each encounter differently. There are these like frickin' blade boomerangs called wing sticks, which are some of the most fun weapons I've used in a game. I mean, you can behead someone with it and it'll come flying right back to you and you can catch it. Maybe they're a little overpowered. I don't know. I don't really care about that kind of thing. They were fun to use. And the frame rate and the animation and the enemy AI is just really, really great. And it comes on 3 discs, and you can kind of tell why, because they spent a lot of time on the enemies and the way enemies react. I mean, if there's like weaving cover between you and an enemy will realize that the fastest way to you is not by, you know, weaving through the cover, but by, you know, leaping over the cover, or maybe bounding off the wall and jettisoning right at you. And it makes the battles seem really frantic and intense. And yeah, a lot of fun. And the way enemies react to getting hit is really, really fluid and great too, and believable. Enemies like charging at you, and you hit him in the face, and he'll grab his face, but his legs will keep running and like smack a wall and fall down. Hit an enemy in the shoulder, sometimes he'll spin all the way around, and the leg he'll fall and hit his face. You know, it's just, I could tell they put a lot of time into that, and it all runs at just a steady 60 frames per second. And it's just a really impressive feat of technology. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily take away from the pretty bad story and its odd affinity for vehicle sections and a big focus on vehicles. that I wasn't too much of a fan of, and it lacks online multiplayer unless you want to do vehicles, which just isn't as fun as shooting people, as it turns out. But I think it's a pretty decent game, and I think you should give it a look-see, and I'm glad that id is back into the shooter world with something relevant and something fun. My last honorable mention, I don't have a cartridge here. I don't have the cartridge. Super Mario 3D Land is my last honorable mention. I really don't need to say anything too much about it. I think it's just another Mario game. It mixes Galaxy with Super Mario 3, and it manages to be really fun. I think it's too easy, is the main reason it didn't make my list. And I know it gets easy eventually, but I don't want to have to play a game twice to get to the good. And it's not really twice. I mean, it opens up like, this isn't really a spoiler, but it opens like 8 more worlds of levels, and they're significantly harder. But I just don't think, I just think it's just a little too easy. And like it holds your hand and almost makes, and it does that stupid thing like when you beat a world, make sure to stop when you're tired. Just the stupid Nintendo-y stuff that is starting to get on my nerves a little bit. But yeah, that's an honorable mention as well. So now let's get to the actual list, starting with number 10. Number 10 is L.A. Noire by Rockstar. In this game, obviously, when this game was being previewed, everyone was all up in arms about the animation, the facial animation, and how real it looked. And that is definitely a draw for this game. I think the way that they do the facial animation is, a step in the right direction. Sometimes the sometimes the characters don't look. They sort of occupy the uncanny valley a little bit, but most of the times they look like real people. And that's important because a major element of this game's gameplay is interrogating persons of interest and reading their facial expressions and being able to tell if they're lying or if they're telling the truth. Basically, if you think they're telling the truth, that's one option. If you think they're lying but you don't have any evidence, that's another. And if you know they're lying because you have evidence, that is a third option. And basically how well you do in the mission is reflected by how well you do in these interrogation sections. And that's not the only section of the game, and if that seems a little bit boring, I promise you it manages to stay fresh, I think, for the whole thing. I mean, I can imagine some people getting a little tired of it. I can. But for me, it was a good gameplay mechanic for the entire ride. There are other parts too. There are free roams that you unlock when you finish. There are like 4 sections of the game. Each time you finish a section, you unlock a free roam for that section. Basically, you can just go around doing miscellaneous cases, if you will, and just generally being a goofball, like you can't in the main mission, because the main mission, since you play a cop in this game, unlike an outlaw in all the other Rockstar games, you actually have to be careful. You can't hit a pedestrian when you're driving, or you can't damage your police car or city property or anything like that. You have to actually be careful, which to some people is like it's missing the point of being an open world Rockstar game. To me, it was just something different. And the story is basically you play Cole McGrath. No, not Cole McGrath. Cole Phelps. Mixed my games up there. Cole Phelps. He's an up-and-comer in the LAPD, and basically it's just his story. There's a little bit of background, and it's scattershot. There's a bit of an overarching theme, but it's basically just about, each sort of section has its own set of stories. There's some conspiracy, there's some infidelity, and it does a good job of getting you in the mood for playing a game that's set in 1947. Like I said, there's the interrogations. There's also investigating crime scenes, looking for clues, and that's a lot of fun too. And, also how well you do on a mission is reflected by how many bits of evidence you find and how long it takes you to find them, I think. And then there are also some, like, actual cool police sections where you have to chase down a convict or gun someone down. There's a particularly... the last section is particularly a bit of a non sequitur in terms of the rest of the gameplay. It's a lot of combat in the last section, whereas earlier it wasn't. But I'm not complaining because the combat's still pretty good. It's again sort of a derivative of the way the combat was in Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto 4. But Rockstar, they're coming out with something different, and Team Bondi, which I'm not sure. I know there's some animosity between them. We're probably never going to see another LA Noire, so don't get your hopes up or anything like that. But Team Bondi really developed a great game, and Rockstar jumped on it and put their name on it, and it sold well, I think. And it's just something really unique. And if you're not into that kind of thing, you think it's boring, that's fine. But I think it's definitely worth a look if you're just looking for something different. So there it is, LA Noire. That was the first video, and I'll see you in the next part.